Hi everyone, so this is a video of Venus in astrology and how Venus impacts your marriage and what is the karma of your marriage and your karmic partner or your divine partner, the karma that you have around your marriage and how Venus is impacting that. I'll also be covering Venus in D9 versus Venus in D1. So, first of all, what is Venus? We all know that Venus represents a lot of things. However, in this video, I would only be majorly covering Venus and its aspect of marriage. Okay, because Venus is the karma that you are carrying forward from your previous lifetime to this lifetime when it comes to marriage and relationships. So Venus in general does represent the things that you have in your life that gives you luxury, your financial conditions, your beauty, everything regarding your hygiene. It represents your females in life, then also represents the jewelries, the kind of jewelries that you like, your fashion sense. A lot of things are represented by Venus, but majorly Venus is the karak of your marriage. Now in this video I will cover what is Venus in D1 versus what is Venus in D9. Now before we delve into what is Venus in D1 versus D9, we have to understand that Venus is actually a very intense and deep planet. Majorly most of the people think that Venus is such a lovely harmonious planet, and wherever it sits it makes the things very balanced, and it loves to spread peace and harmony. But no, Venus also represents a deep karma of your marriage. And if you see, Venus represents your love life and romance. And whenever you read love stories or whenever you see romance or marriage in general, it is full of ups and downs. So, Venus would represent the quality of the marriage, the quality of the relationships that you have in this lifetime. Now, I will also cover certain conjunctions and how these conjunctions work with Venus, like Venus and Mercury, Venus and Mars, Venus and Saturn, etc. How these conjunction would impact your married life, and how is it different from, like how it's different to have these conjunctions in D1 versus D9. So, if talking about first Venus in D1, now you see, any kind of relationship that you have in your life, be it your relationship with people that you meet on a day-to-day basis, the relationship that you have with your female friends, the relationship that you have with females in general, or people that you meet in general, that is actually Venus in your D1. The way that you express love, the way that you give out love is Venus in D1. Now you will also see that people, when they look at Venus in D1 chart, they usually ignore Venus in D1 because they always think that Venus in D9 is way more important. Well, in a way, yes, Venus in D9 is definitely way more important. It is very, very important. However, Venus in D1 can also be a very protective source. You cannot just look at Venus in D9 and predict everything about marriage. You have to understand that whenever we look at D1 and D9 chart is a bifurcation or a subdivision of the D1 chart, the ninth house of the D1 chart. So you cannot just predict everything from the D9 chart. You have to first look at the D1 chart. Now, Venus in D1 would represent the kind of relationships that you are having in life also. So, if you go in the deeper aspects of Venus, not just the zodiacs, but also if you go on the deeper sides wherein we take constellations or nakshatras into consideration, then you would understand that a very funnel down and accurate prediction of the connections that you have in life is seen. Now, Venus in D9 actually is the major representation of the life that you enjoy after marriage. The kind of love that you are experiencing within the marriage, the kind of romance that you see within the marriage. What are the major changes that you have faced after you got married? That is what you see with Venus in D9. And majorly, there is a lot of misconception that people think that if, let's say, your Venus in D9 is not very well placed, or if, let's say, it's being aspected by Saturn or heavy malefics like Rahu and Saturn and Mars, then marriage is probably not meant for you, or you will be like single forever. But no, that is not the correct way to analyze Venus. There is only one or two ways to realize and to analyze if someone is meant to be unmarried. So, whenever you are looking to understand if a person is meant to marry or not, check the D1 chart first. Because always remember that D9 is a bifurcation of the D1 chart. You can't just take D9 chart and analyze it by itself. You have to first look at the D1 chart. So if you see that D1, if let's say you have Venus that is well placed in D1, right? And what is being meant by well placed? Well, if Venus is being fed well, if it's placed in a house that is positive, if it's being aspected by, benefics or neutrals, and if let's say Venus is in a position where it should not deny marriage, then you can go and look at the D9 chart. So first you analyze the D1 chart and then you look at the D9 chart. Now, Venus in D9 would first of all represent how your life changes after marriage. Check the sign that Venus in D1 is placed and then the sign that Venus in D9 is placed. Using the concept, there are a lot of concepts wherein you can just analyze that before marriage there were certain things in life, and after marriage, like there are some people who rise massively after marriage. So it is actually the 9th house and the D9 chart that starts operating, and it's basically because of their Venus, because Venus was in such a position that everything changed after marriage. You'll also see that there are certain people who would start from scratch when it comes to marriage. If let's say, for example, if let's say there is a person and they were pursuing, they were probably in the banking sector before marriage. Once they got married, they moved to foreign lands and now they're doing something completely different. They've started their life from scratch. So that happens again because of the Venus in D9 chart. Now, along with this, you also have to see that the Venus, wherever it's placed in the D9 chart, it's very important to keep that house alive to make the marriage working, right? So, for example, let's say you have Venus placed in the second house of your D9 chart. Now, to make this marriage work, you have to work together as a family. You have to focus on income, you have to focus on family. Food and fine dining would be a major part that will play a great significant role in your marriage, and you would not even realize it. Maybe let's say you and your person, you are working and things are getting very tiresome, and one day you just realize that let's go out, have something good, we'll eat something, like we'll go for some fine dining or have some wine or whatever. And once you do that, you realize that things started flowing more naturally within the marriage. Why is it so? Because Venus was placed in the second house of the D9 chart. Now, this is just a normal, regular, mundane example that I'm giving. Things would change differently, completely, if let's say there is a typical sign placed within this second house of Venus. If let's say there is a sign that changes everything, because you have to remember that Venus can only be judged when you're looking at signs plus houses. Along with this, very important that Venus in your D9 chart would also represent a major part of the personality of the spouse. Now, until and unless let's say you are a Libra ascendant or you're a Taurus ascendant in D9 chart, then definitely Venus would represent a side of you as well. However, it's very important to look at the first house of the D9 chart. The first house of the D9 chart would significantly represent you and your karmic pattern and how your path would unfold after you get married. But the sign that Venus is placed in, especially go deeper into the constellation. I have seen this so many times. If let's say Venus is placed in the sign of Scorpio, Venus in the sign of Scorpio would play very differently for three different people. If let's say some person has Venus in Scorpio in Anuradha, versus people who have Venus in Scorpio in Jyeshtha, versus for people who have Venus in Scorpio in Vishaka in the D9 chart. If you see these three constellations, it would work out very differently. So all the spouses of these three different people would be very different. Just because they have the sign of Scorpio that is put in Venus just does not mean that their marriage would be very secretive, or marriage would be something like a very private couple. There'd be a very private couple. Of course, these are the things that would be true for these three. Especially, for example, Venus is in the sign of Scorpio in D9 chart. You can easily understand the kind of spouse that they have. You'll understand the kind of marriage that they have. But then if you look at the constellations, you will understand that their spouse would reflect a part of that constellation. So it is important to look at Venus in the D9 chart to even analyze the personality of your spouse. Because whenever you're looking at your spouse, like how your spouse would be within the marriage and how they are going to be with you in the marriage, look at Venus in the D9 chart, look at the 7th house of the D9 chart. These are the two major important houses that you have to look at. And fourth house is also important, second house is also important, but since we're only talking about spouse and Venus at the moment, I would still suggest that look at Venus in the D9 plus look at the 7th house and also the first house. Now again, Venus in D9 would represent the quality of your marriage or the major elements that you need to focus on when it comes to your marriage. Now for example, if you have Venus in the sign of Gemini in D9 chart, you will see that this marriage would be full of communication, especially telephonic communication or communication through text, social media, whatever. But more than in person communication, this would be a communication that is based on electronic media. And it's important that this couple needs to be that best friend couple. More than romantic relationship, you'd see that this couple shares a platonic relationship, that their bond is like very humorous. They share the sense of humor, they share a good friend like bond. So now let's quickly cover the what is the karma that you have around Venus. Now, marriage is definitely one of the highest karmas, right? Highest karmic backlog, highest karmic payoff that you have to do in this lifetime. Now, if let's say Venus is conjunct certain planets in your D9 chart, now that would also show a very different side of Venus. As of now, we were talking about Venus independently, but in astrology, no planet works independently. You will always see that planets would work together with other planets, right? And that is how, this is why each and every person would have different quality of marriage, because some people might have conjunction of Venus Saturn, some may have Venus and Saturn mutual aspect, some might have Venus and Mercury and whatever, so on and so forth. Now if let's say Venus shows the karma of your marriage, right? Now this Venus in D9 would definitely show the quality and the karmic backlog that you have of marriage in this lifetime. Now this is the marriage that you are meant to experience in this lifetime, right? And conjunctions would show a whole different picture. Now you have to take a lot of things, conjunctions, houses, signs, aspect, a lot of things into consideration, and then only an accurate prediction can be made. However, there would be certain gist that would still remain the same, right? So if let's say Venus is conjunct Mercury, now you would see that Venus and Mercury usually gives a very lively, fun, humorous couple. A couple that is very friend-like. You know that the bond usually would be very creative, very fun-loving. It would be more like friends. You'll see that this is the kind of couple who would go out and socialize and have a group of friends together. They would go on and go on and have good trips to maybe other states or cafes or whatever, but this is a very outgoing, fun loving couple, right? Now again, this is just Venus and Mercury. I don't know if Saturn is also conjunct here. I don't know if Sun is aspecting Venus here, right? Because this is again D9 chart, and Venus and Sun can aspect each other in D9 chart. This is not possible in D1 chart, but then in D9 chart, Venus and Sun can aspect each other. Venus and Mercury can aspect each other. Venus and Mercury and Sun can be conjunct together, right? So it will change the whole scenario. Now you see Venus and Saturn together. This is a kind of combination wherein loyalty would be very important within the marriage. You will see that this couple would be a very down to earth couple. They're very stable, they're very solid. It's very difficult to shake this couple. And as much as people think that, oh, Venus and Saturn, it's not good, it's bad. No. It depends where it's placed, number one. Number two, it depends if we are looking at the D1 chart or if we're looking at the D9 chart. Venus and Saturn together or Venus and Saturn mutual aspect can be an excellent position. Because think about it. Venus is representing marriage. Saturn likes contracts and long-term relations. So the nature of Venus and Saturn actually coincides. However, again, you have to see where this conjunction is happening, because in some cases this can be a negative approach or negative scenario if let's say there are particular houses that Venus and Saturn are placed in, and if I would not be able to express it completely here, because again, if you just look at a chart just from superficial point of view, you would not be able to understand it. We have to funnel it down and then be articulate with the predictions, and then only you will be understand what I'm trying to say. However, Saturn and Venus together can be excellent for growth, especially financial growth. However, this will be a late financial growth. You cannot just expect money to flow in as soon as you get married. It's like Venus and Saturn together takes time, but once the timing is done, once that test is done, then it just showers you, with that finance or that blessing. Now, Venus and Mars. Now, again, passion, friction, passion would be there. However, you have to see that Venus and Mars, even though there is passion, there is love, there is lust, but Venus and Mars can also sometimes be very argumentative. Unnecessary bickering, unnecessary arguments can be a part of that. It's like, it's very simple to analyze Venus and Mars. It's like two people are coming together, they butt heads, they argue, but then they're deeply in love at the same time. So they won't let go of each other. So this is Venus and Mars. Venus and Rahu gives a foreign element. There is a chance marrying someone who is from a different culture, marrying someone from a different ethnic background, or having a complete different lifestyle, having complete different childhoods. Like some people just do not connect with each other when it comes to the childhood. Maybe for example, let's say the husband grew up in India, but then the wife grew up in foreign lands, so they're not able to establish that connection. Maybe because husband is just not aware of how things were there in the foreign lands, and because wife was never in India, she just could not understand how things were back in India. So that's there, the element of being foreign, the element of unknown, that comes into play when Venus and Rahu are together. Venus and Ketu, it's a very strong sign of someone from the past coming back. Maybe not necessarily past, could actually be past life also. But there's a very strong connection that you feel when Venus and Ketu are together. It's like that person. There is this instant connection, instant recognition when Venus and Ketu are together. And it's like you can't even explain. However, Venus and Ketu can sometimes also make a person very detached. So, you'll see the partner would be someone who's not very much into the materialistic pleasures. Or maybe the partner is a very private person. They do not like to engage into, outer world, or like talking to a lot of people. Nope, they'll be in their own space most of the time. Or this can also be you, depending on where Venus is placed, depending on how Ketu is positioned. And again, all of the planetary position that I'm telling, it's only based on two planetary conjunctions. I'm not taking any signs or any house into consideration. Now, Venus and Jupiter, even though it sounds like a great position, it actually is a great position. But this is a position wherein two people would have very different ideologies. Maybe, let's say, you have an ideology wherein you focus more on your own growth, right? But then the partner is more like, okay, we can focus on our growth as well, but you know what, we should also think about society, and we should think about how we can make the lives of other people better. So it's like there is this difference of ideologies. However, it's a good position to have exchange of knowledge, to have this great high philosophical talks, wherein you have this mission together, wherein you might also help a lot of people. I've seen this a lot. People who have Venus and Jupiter together, these are the kind of couple who are very benevolent, very philanthropist kind of couple. Now, Venus and Moon together, you can see this couple would be a very lovey-dovey couple. Very, very lovey-dovey couple. However, sometimes you'll see that this is a very sensitive couple as well. So it can either be you or the partner. Again, depending on where Venus and Moon is placed, depending on what is your ascendant, depending on your 7th house, and a lot of other factors, you or your spouse can be very moody. They can be very sensitive. You have to be very careful on what you say and how you say. If you raise your tone, they might also get so hurt, they might get so emotional that they take it to their heart, and then they're just giving you the silent treatment. So a lot of things have to be taken into consideration. So this was actually the karma of Venus and how Venus would be when it comes to your married life. This is actually how Venus would play its role And you have to understand that Venus in D9 is equally important as Venus in D1. And actually, Venus in D9 is way more important. However, it would get more importance after you cross a certain age. There is so much more to cover. Probably I have to make a part 2 of this video, but I'd only make a part 2 of this video if people are willing to watch, if people are willing to understand. So if you are willing to watch and if you are willing to understand more of the hidden secrets of Venus, please comment. And probably we'll also do Venus and other planets through Navamsha, and Venus and other planets and all the signs of D1 and D9 chart. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.